gingerbread we made yesterday needs to be iced. I'm going to make a small batch of royal icing just to show you how it's done. We're going to start with 2 cups of powdered sugar, a half of a teaspoon of vanilla. Now, people make royal icing many different ways. I choose to use meringue powder in mine because I don't like the idea of raw egg whites ever. So I use 4 teaspoons of meringue powder and then 3 tablespoons of water. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to whisk that together until it becomes glossy. So you can use egg whites and egg white powder. I have done it with egg whites. I have found that it is not of a consistency that I can pipe or it gets too runny. And I'm not a big fan of, like I said, raw egg whites. I've never used the egg white powder just because I found meringue powder and it worked. So if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? You look and see how glossy it is. That is a good royal icing. So we're going to scrape the whisk. Ooh, that tool does work and it works well. I knew it would. I was so excited. So excited that I bought my mother-in-law one as soon as I bought myself one because she would use it too. Anyway, and then once we get all this in the bowl, we're going to take it over and portion it into different bowls so that we can color it. And then we'll decorate our gingerbread. Okay, y'all, I tried to scoop out my royal icing, and it is stiff as a board, which means it's not going to pass through my piping. So I'm going to take about another half of a teaspoon of water and see if that'll thin it out enough for me to pipe. If not, we just keep adding water until we get to the right consistency. The problem is that with gingerbread, you want to pipe really fine lines. So it can't be too runny, then it'll run all over the place. And it can't be too stiff or it won't come out of the little hole in the #1 tip that I'm going to be using. Alright, let's check out the consistency now. Nope, still too stiff. Okay. Let's add another half teaspoon. Now we're ready. So what I'm going to do first is draw kind of a rough sketch of what I want on my gingerbread with these edible pens. But in the meantime, so that my royal icing doesn't thicken, because this will be like glue once it dries, we're going to take a wet towel and hang it over the top so that that moisture stays in. And then I'm going to start drawing on my gingerbread. So these panels need doors and windows. So I want to do a rough outline of where I would put those things so that when we get to piping, I know where I'm going. So I have a darker pen. I'm thinking about here for the door. Then maybe we'll put a window here. Window here. And let's put a wreath here. door handle. And then we'll freehand the rest. Alright, so we're going to color our royal icing. I'm going to do 3 different colors to start with. And probably, actually I know, I'm going to end up making more of this just so that we can, but we're going to start out with piping and then we'll do flooding a little later. So piping creates the outline, and that's the first thing you want to do. Let it dry, and then we'll create an icing that is not as thick, and that will flood whatever picture you have outlined. For instance, if you wanted to do windows, you could outline the window panes in a green and then make yellow what your window pane, the color of your actual window panes. Okay, so I also made sure that I used bowls that I had lids to so that we could keep the air out. I'm going to start with green. Requires some muscle today. Alright, looks like we're going to need some more green coloring. It's more of a mint green than a Christmas green, so let's add some more. The other thing, important note about royal icing is that it often dries darker than you see. So if you're looking at it and you say, that's a pretty green shade, it's going to dry 1 to 2 shades darker. Okay, so there's our green, and when we finish piping it, we'll mix together our yellow and our red. So to fill our piping bag, I've put a glass. Put the icing bag in it, and then we're going to scrape all of this icing into the bag. This keeps you from making a giant mess, or it's supposed to anyway. Another thing to make note of is, when I put icing in the bag, I use a coupler, and you use the coupler so that you can change icing tips if you want to. Right now I have a number 3 on there, which I'm going to use to pipe straight lines, but then I have a star waiting for when I want to pipe garland or trees. And all I have to do is take this little piece off, change out the silver piece, screw that back on, and you don't have to change entire piping bags. Right. So, I'm going to start here. What I want to do on this one in particular, I'm going to make us have some green windows. This is going to be kind of a whimsical house. So then tomorrow we'll come in and flood those windows with a different color once that's dry. Now I want a green door on this house. I'm not going to put anything green on that one. So now let's switch out our icing tip. I'm going to put that star in. And now I'm going to do the garland that I drew on these 2 houses, and the wreath I drew on that one. So with a wreath in the star tip, I am just moving it slightly back and forth to give it a little bit of movement. So that it looks like that fluffiness you get from wreath. And we will add some red holly berries in there so that it looks more like a wreath. So with this one, I'm going to wipe my tip off. Wipe that off too. And then we are just going to pipe stars for the wreath. And then we'll come back through and add more. But first, let's make some yellow. All right. So I'm gonna do the star on here in yellow. And see where that outline comes in handy? And then let's do the windows over here. So now I have my red icing, and we're going to just pipe some tiny holly berries on our wreath. And we'll pipe some little berries into our garland. I'm going to do these a little farther apart because I'm going to use some gold pearls as well. And of course this person decorated their house with the same garland. So the fun thing about gingerbread houses for me is that it's all in my imagination. I can make whatever I want. I can make it look however I want it to look. And it doesn't have to be someone else's idea. And there is no wrong way to do it. So these are just simple golden pearls that we're going to set in to the icing. So that there's a little sparkle. And once all of this dries, we will be back to pipe on some snow. So we're back with gingerbread houses. I'm going to add, I have snow-capped gingerbread houses. So first thing I got to do is put snow on them. And then we're going to do the icing for flooding. So I have my piping icing right here. We're going to add some to our bag. Cover that back up, otherwise that icing is going to harden. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have a wide round solid tip on the end. And all I want to do is do a back and forth motion all the way to the top. And down the sides. And there we go. We're going to do those on the other two, and then we'll make icing for flooding.